derde sessie on irregular migration and return. En zoals we gedaan hebben, ook met de vorige onderdelen, gaan we dat inleiden met cijfers en trends. Het is David Vogel van het Belgisch contactpunt van het Europees Migratienetwerk die dat gaat doen. Hij volgt voor EMN ook de werkzaamheden op in het kader van de Return Expert Group. En voilà, David, you have the floor for Belgian figures and trends.
Good afternoon and welcome to the last session of the day on irregular migration, human trafficking and return. Before giving the floor to our last speakers of the day, I'll present you the latest outputs of the EMN regarding return, as well as recent figures and trends in this field. So first, a few words about the latest developments within the Return Expert Group. The REG is a platform for operational cooperation and sharing of expertise. It builds synergies by providing the structure for the follow-up, planning and monitoring of practical cooperation of return activities. The EMN REG connects key stakeholders, including not only member states, but also representatives from international organizations, as well as civil society. So accurate and timely provision of information is key for a successful return. But not every member state uses the same approaches when it comes to migrant counseling. The Commission has therefore decided to draft guidances on return counseling based on information collected through ad hoc queries and several workshops organized this year. The result is an EU framework on return counseling endorsed by the Commission and to be used by institutions involved in return counseling when setting up, managing or developing return counseling structures in the member states. A second strand of work focus on the data protection between member states and international organizations involved in return operations. Knowing that international organizations are not legally bound by the new EU regulation on data protection, the REG has developed a model agreement to be signed with partners in order to ensure the compliance with the RGPD regulation. Another development initiated this year is the development of an assisted voluntary return and reintegration inventory. The objective of the AVRR inventory is twofold. On the one hand, collecting and recording of data related to the member states' AVR programs, and on the other hand, make this data available and searchable to an audience of practitioners through a dedicated EU portal. Several other queries pertaining to return has been published this year. Among these, one addressed best interest of the child determination in return decision, policies and practices on return counseling for migrants, application of the principle of non-refoulement in return procedures, or policies and practices on outreach and information provision. All these other queries are, of course, available on our website. Regarding the priority topic proposed for 2020, effective alternatives to detention. The objective is to map good practices in the member states and provide a reference guide to policymakers on such existing alternatives. Another topic will address the illegal stay. All member states acknowledge the necessity to tackle the problematic of the so-called non-removables, posing procedural challenges to the member states. The objective will be to identify challenges and good practices in dealing with prolonged illegal stay in member states. Finally, the focus will be made on vulnerable migrants by increasing awareness on ongoing initiatives and mapping good practices to ensure the sustainable return of those vulnerable persons. Let's take a look at some figures and trends in the EU. So according to the definition of the Commission, the return rate corresponds to the number of third country nationals ordered to leave the territory who have effectively returned to a third country. In 2008, the return rate remains at a level of 36%. of effective return, and we can observe that the return rate has remained in this range over the past decade, with the exceptions for year 2013 and 2016. It's also worth pointing out that the effective return rate would be even lower if the Western Balkan countries, which have a relatively high return rate, were not included in this calculation. The third countries with the highest number of nationals who were issued a return decision for the EU in 2018 were Morocco, Ukraine, Albania, Afghanistan, and Algeria. Average return rates among member states can vary significantly. It can be very difficult to compare. The variation between member states does not necessarily reflect the effectiveness of return systems. These variations may be due to different approaches when collecting and processing data, as well as in defining the different types of return. Aside from internal factors, the migration mix can also have a significant influence given the diverse levels of cooperation member states might have with country of origin on return and readmission. In this regard, if we take a look at the different return rates for the largest third countries subject to return decisions, we observe significant discrepancies among them. With return rates ranging from more than 100% for Albania on the left of the chart to only 3% effectiveness for Syria on the right of the chart. Let's take a look now at the stocks of third country nationals who were ordered to leave the territory in the EU since the high influx of applicants for international protections in 2015. Based on the stocks of third country nationals ordered to leave the territory, Belgium is ranked at the 7th position, preceded by the largest countries of receptions, namely France, Germany, Greece, UK, Spain, or Italy. Let's focus now on the number of third country nationals returned through return programs, both voluntarily or forcedly. Even if, again, the definitions of voluntary and forced return may vary greatly among member states, we can still observe different approaches among them. Where voluntary return and forced return seem to be equally conducted in countries such as Austria, Belgium, or France, with more or less the same number of returns for both programs. Forced return seem to be favored by other member states, such as Germany, the Netherlands, or Italy. Let's take a look now at some figures for Belgium, both for voluntary and forced return. So first of all, to give you an order of magnitude of the return phenomenon in Belgium, let's glance at the number of potential returnees in Belgium for year 2018. So in 2018, 34,877 orders to leave the territory were issued in Belgium, which represents a decrease of 23% compared to 2017. This number does not include the refusal at the border. So these 34,877 decisions concerned 28,109 individuals. And among these 2,900 individuals, 19,668 had received a return decision for the first time in 2018. Among these 19,000 individuals ordered to leave the territory for the first time, 11% were from an EU country. And finally, Morocco was by far the largest country of origin regarding return decisions, with 14% of all return decisions issued in Belgium in 2018. So in 2018, 2,994 individuals benefited from the assisted voluntary return program in Belgium, including 1,370 who received reintegration support. This represents a drop of 27% compared to previous year. This decrease follows follows the downward trend initiated since the peak of returns observed after the high influx of applicants for international protection in 2015. What is the profile of the persons who voluntarily returned in 2018? 64% of them were men, and 36% were women. And what are the types of individuals returned? 76% were families, 23% of the returnees were individuals, and only 1% of the voluntary return concerned unaccompanied minors in 2018. Now, if we take a look at the evolution of the share of voluntary return per status, we observe since 2016 a steady decrease in the share of migrants having returned while still in procedure for international protection. This decrease logically follows the high influx of applicants in 2015. But conversely, the share of irregularly staying migrants is in an upward trend over the past years, with in 2018 and 2019 more than 2/3 of the voluntary returns. Regarding the desks used by the returnees to organize their return, the return partners, namely IOM and Caritas, were the first desks used by the migrants to prepare their return, followed by the return desks. Return desks are counters located in major Belgian cities where migrants can gather information and prepare their voluntary return if they want to. 40% of the returns were organized directly from the reception network managed by FedAsyl, and 2% were organized from detention or closed centers. What is the state of play of the voluntary return in 2019? So including figures for October. 81% returned through the AVR program until October. The number of returnees for 2019 should confirm the downward trend started over the last year. The percentage of irregularly staying migrants returning remains relatively high compared to other stages, with around 70% of the migrants voluntarily returned. And the top countries for return compared to previous year are in order Brazil, Romania, Ukraine, Iraq, and Georgia. Let's take a look at the evolution of forced returns now over the past decade. In 2018, 3,980 individuals were forcibly returned. Among these 3,900, 2,842 have returned to their country of origin. 792 were Dublin cases, and 346 returned to another EU member state according to bilateral agreements Belgium might have with these member states. So among these 2,842 removals towards country of origin, almost 1/4 were conducted towards another EU member state. Now, I hope you like flags as I do. I'll show you the top countries for forced returns. So it was Albania, Romania, Morocco, Brazil, and Georgia. Albania represents almost 1/4 of all forced return towards countries of origin for 2019. The Dublin cases were Eritrea, Sudan, Algeria, Palestine, and Morocco. And less interesting bilateral takebacks were for Eritrea, Pakistan, Morocco, Brazil, and Albania. Morocco, which has the largest number of return decisions, is in the top 5 of every type of forced return this year, as you can see. Finally, regarding forced return, the same trend can be observed as for voluntary return, with a decrease in the number of migrants forcibly returned over the past years. So far this year, 3,063 individuals were forcibly returned. Among them, 71% were towards the country of origin, 20% were Dublin, and 8% were bilateral takebacks. And finally, the top destination, all types of forced return were Albania, followed by Romania, Morocco at the third place, Eritrea, and finally Brazil as for a voluntary return. Thank you.